President Trump reportedly considering putting solar panels on top of his planned border wall as a way to help offset the cost.
So, Trump's got a great idea. He's going to build a wall and make the sun pay for it.
And we're thinking of something that's unique. We're talking about the southern border. Lots of sun, lots of heat. We're thinking about building the wall as a solar wall, so it creates energy and pays for itself.
Bruce Blakeman is a principal with the Sustainable Technology, Inc. His company submitted a blueprint design for solar panels on the border wall, and he joins us live.
It's kind of like solar freaking roadways, just solar freaking wallways.
Solar freaking roadways.
What are they?
They're solar freaking roadways.
Meanwhile, President Trump has reportedly pitched Republican leaders on a solar-paneled border wall with Mexico. Sounds like a win-win, right?
It's technology that replaces all roadways, parking lots, sidewalks, driveways, tarmacs, bike paths, and outdoor recreation services with solar panels. And not just lifeless, boring.
And can't there be a generating of revenue from that border barrier? And one of the engineers said, let's put solar on it. And he made a brilliant design.
No more useless asphalt and concrete just sitting there baking in the sun, needing to be repaved and filling with potholes.
That can generate a tremendous amount of megawatt hours, 2 million megawatt hours per year.
Unbelievable. And for it to go out like that and up like that, it would be hard to climb over.
Exactly.
Oh, and did I mention that they're also solar panels? They generate electricity, they generate capital, they pay for themselves, and they keep paying more because we're not going to run out of sun for like 15 billion years.
Any possibility you could put a bunch of people together to finance this thing, and then through the solar energy that it produces, it would pay for itself and you wouldn't have to go to Congress?
Well, that's our plan, Steve.
Okay, so we're looking at one of the designs right here. Explain what we're looking at.
A beautiful rendition of the border barrier with the solar component. As you can see, it's mesh, it's steel mesh. You can see through it.
And this way, Mexico will have to pay much less money. And that's good, right? Is that good?
Sell the electricity to the grids in the southwest of the United States and Mexico, so Mexico pays for part of the wall.
No, that's not Mexico paying for the wall. That's you selling electricity to Mexico. But oddly enough, even though Trump now thinks that it's a great idea to put solar panels on things to make things pay for themselves, but at the same time, he's not really done that with his own buildings or his, say, sun-drenched resort in Mar-a-Lago. In fact, like most things Trump says, it's not actually that hard to find him saying the diametric opposite. So let's hear Trump saying that solar power is a waste of time.
So I think wind is fine. But would you invest government money in alternative fuels? Would you do that, or would you just let it go?
I would spend money on certain things. Now, solar always sounds better than it is. You know, you have a 36-year payback.
And that was only about 1 year ago. Trump was quite clear that solar was essentially burning money.
I always want to go solar. I love the idea of solar. And then I do a test, and you get your money back in 36 years. The problem is the panels destroy themselves after 10 years. So it's just, you know, you've got to make it economically viable, Bill. Right now, it's not economically.
Which I guess has maybe changed a little now that he's burning somebody else's money, you know, public money.
Would you invest government money in alternative fuels? Would you do that?
Solar always sounds better than it is. You know, you have a 36-year payback.
And for those who don't fully appreciate what a remote and difficult landscape it is, this is just a little fly over one section of the US-Mexican border. Now, initially, Trump wanted Mexico to pay for the wall.
The wall just got 10 feet taller, believe me.
The wall just got 10 feet higher.
Got 10 feet taller. How easy is that? It's going to happen, okay?
That wall will go up.
It's going to happen.
It's going to go up.
Impenetrable, physical, tall, powerful, beautiful southern border. It's going to be a real wall. There's going to be a real wall.
It's going to be a real wall.
It will be a real wall. It's going to be a real wall. A real wall.
They're talking about a fence in the Republican Congress.
Sure.
Would you accept a fence?
For certain areas, I would.
Okay, you ready? Who's going to pay for the wall? Who? 100%. 100%.
And there was just a slight fly in the ointment that Mexico said it wasn't going to pay for the wall.
Mexico's president said in recent days that Mexico absolutely will not pay, adding that it goes against our dignity as a country and our dignity as Mexicans.
Who's going to pay for the wall? Who?
So the American taxpayer will pay for the wall at first.
All it is we'll be reimbursed at a later date from whatever transaction we make from Mexico.
So what next? Great idea. Put solar panels on the wall and make it pay for itself. And that way you make the sun pay Mexico to pay for the wall. Or more accurately, you're just selling electricity to Mexico. Genius. And the crowd goes wild.
And this way, Mexico will have to pay much less money. And that's good, right? Is that good?
So which Trump is right? Is putting solar panels on a wall to make it pay for itself a really good or a really stupid idea? Well, this might actually shock you, but they're both wrong. But that being said, putting solar panels on the border wall is a really, really dumb idea. But what did you expect from a guy whose scientific literacy is he thinks that gases that he releases into his apartment cannot escape?
They say if I'm in my bathroom in Trump Tower, sealed with concrete, right? 8-inch concrete floors, 8-inch concrete walls. I spray my hair. Zip, zip. They tell me I'm destroying the ozone. It's 400 miles up.
A man who doesn't realise that if his apartment was a sealed system, he would be deader than a bunny with no air holes.
And if I spray it in my apartment, which is all sealed, and you're telling me that affects the ozone layer? Yes. I say no way, folks. No way. Okay? No.
I mean, this isn't just dumb. Stopping ozone depletion was one of the great scientific success stories of our time. It saved millions of lives. And Trump talks about it not just like it never actually happened, but like he never believed it in the first place.
They tell me I'm destroying the ozone. It's 400 miles up.
It's quite literally as dumb as saying, oh, come on, the Earth is spherical. I mean, if the Earth was spherical, then why doesn't all the water run off? Oh, come on, the Earth is spinning. I mean, if the Earth is spinning, then why don't we all get dizzy? No way, folks, no way. So why is the solar-powered wall a dumb idea? Well, let's start with the speculated origin of this idea.
Did you get to the president before he made that sort of semi-announcement that he's thinking of solar panels?
The rumor is that he saw us on Fox Business News, that he saw our design, and that he, in fact, started talking about it as a viable idea.
Well, that's great, because it just so happens that this guy also showed the design of his solar wall to the people at Fox and Friends and Fox Business Insider. Let's just see if our presenters on Fox and Friends and Fox Business Insider are dumb enough to be shown a picture of a solar-powered wall with no solar panels on it and say, wow, that's a really good design for a solar-powered wall.
Basically, if you look at the Agua Caliente model, which is a 6,000-acre solar farm, we would produce the same amount of energy.
That's the design on the screen right now?
Yes.
So that border wall would look like that?
Yes.
All the way along?
Yes. The photo...
It's a vast solar panel display.
This is genius.
Well, we got together a group of creative people, designers, engineers, homeland security experts. Yes. The top would be the photovoltaic energy gathering component, and the bottom would be steel mesh that would be 30 feet in height that would...
What the hell is wrong with you retards? The solar wall has no solar panels on it. I mean, hell, at least solar roadways put some solar panels in them. This is a solar-powered wall with no solar panels.
That's the design on the screen right now?
Yes.
So that border wall would look like that?
Yes.
All the way along?
Yes. The photo...
It's a vast solar panel display.
Well, we're looking at a beautiful rendition of the border barrier with the solar component. As you can see, it's mesh, it's steel mesh. You can see through it.
Okay, deep breath, deep breath. They're only the top-rated cable news network. Yeah, I can't expect them to spot minor design flaws like a solar-powered wallway has no solar panels on it. But even if it did have solar panels on it, this is still an outrageously dumb design. You see, the border between America and Mexico, ignoring the little details, is pretty close to the equator. It's about 25 degrees north, that sort of thing. And the border essentially goes east-west. So the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, goes almost directly overhead at midday. Now, if you want to get the most out of your solar panels, you want them flat and pointed directly at the sun. So if you're not going to track them or do anything sophisticated, that basically means that for this sort of latitude, your solar panels are essentially pointing straight up in the air. And to angle them over, especially angle them over at a very high angle, is essentially just throwing away most of the photons that you would get from the sun. The simple way of looking at it is the larger the shadow cast by the solar panels, the more photons you're soaking up from the sun. So what they're doing by actually having it all bent over like this is basically using more solar panels to collect less sunlight. So let's take a quick look at Trump's claim that solar panels require 36 years to make their return on investment, and that they actually destroy themselves after about 10 years. Well, Trump's numbers are just way off. So I mean, even years back, once you include all of the installation costs and everything, you'd be looking at a return on investment of a solar installation of about 10 years. And their expected lifespan was about twice that. And now if you look at just the time it takes to get the money back to manufacture the panels, solar panels are getting really good, being able to pay for just the cost of the solar panels within a year or so. So where's the problem, I hear you ask? Put solar panels on the wall and you're done. Well, not so fast. If I put solar panels on my roof that is in an urban area, you already have access to the grid. But if you didn't have access to the grid, transporting that electricity is a pain in the arse. And it requires desperately expensive infrastructure. Now, the best you can do for electricity transport is high voltage transfer. So bear in mind that the minimum you're going to need is a high voltage line going the entire length of the border wall for electricity transport. Cool. So that's about $500,000 per mile for a 2,000 mile border wall. So it's basically $1 billion extra right there. Building power lines is expensive, which is why if you take a look at where the power plants are in America, you'll notice they're kind of centered on where the people are. So you don't have to build as much of this expensive infrastructure. Secondly, of course, you're going to need to put solar panels on the wall. So I just took a look around and found some 1 meter by 2 meter solar panels for about $200 each. And you're not going to get massive economies of scale here. So we'll have those for the entire length of the wall. So that's about $500 million worth of solar panels. So the forecast for the actual construction costs of the wall are about $10 to $20 billion. So it's not a great increase in the actual costs of building the wall to make it solar powered. Which, as we will later see, is an absolute disaster if you want solar power to pay for the wall. So how to mount these solar panels? Well, basically, if you have them in the desert down near the equator, and this is only like 20 degrees away from the equator, you'll basically line these solar panels flat on the ground so that the sun goes directly overhead, and it's directly overhead at midday. So with the solar panels on top of the wall, assuming they're not going to track or anything, the simplest installation possible, it's going to look something like this. So how much energy would a solar powered wall generate? Well, it's got about 3 million solar panels on it, which at their peak, when the sun is directly overhead, will generate about 1 gigawatt of power. But of course, that's only when the sun is directly overhead. I mean, the sun is not in the sky for about half of the day, so your average power generation drops by 50% just by that alone. And then, of course, the panels don't track, so you lose another 50% of your energy there. And, of course, you lose more in converting the DC to AC and even more in transport. In practice, your average power generation will be a fraction of what the maximum power generation is. But whatever, doesn't matter. Let's call it a gigawatt anyway. So that would actually be comparable to a reasonable sized power station in the United States. In fact, it would be comparable to the largest solar power station in America, which is actually comparable to a regular power station. I mean, just for comparison, the largest coal plants in the US generate about 3 times this amount of power. But really, why build it there, going through the middle of nowhere? To generate power for what? The people who live there? Because they're short of power? Sure, putting solar panels on top of a wall going through the middle of nowhere is still a better idea than putting them under glass panels in the road.
And it pays for itself. They're solar freaking roadways.
But it's still a really dumb idea. Which brings us on to the next problem, is if you put $1 billion worth of solar panels out in the middle of the desert with no security, what's to stop those criminals from coming up and stealing all of your solar panels? You know, drive out in the middle of the night and bolt a load of the solar panels and just drive off with them. I mean, what are you going to do about it? Police it 24/7? Hell, this isn't like having a solar-powered farm in your own country, where it's comparatively easy to catch the thieves just by putting the odd video camera up there and recording license plates, or tracking stolen goods. Once they've taken them off the wall, they're already over the border. In this sense, putting solar panels on the wall is kind of like just gold plating it. And the final reason why this is a really dumb idea, payback is a bitch. And that's payback in the sense of getting your money back. I mean, remember when Trump said that solar power never pays for itself?
I always want to go solar. I love the idea of solar. And then I do a test and you get your money back in 36 years. The problem is the panels destroy themselves after 10 years. So it's just, you've got to make it economically viable, Bill. Right now, it's not economically.
So what with all the installation costs, the return on investment for a solar installation now is about 10 years, probably less. And that's assuming a nice, simple installation. So let's say the lifespan's about 20 years. So in principle, $1 billion solar installation will pay for itself and generate another $1 billion in its lifetime.
So you're talking about $120 million that it could potentially generate.
Well, wait a minute. The thing costs a couple of billion to build.
Between $3 and $4 billion. But you would finance it with bond financing.
Great. So optimistically, it would just about cover the costs of itself and the power line. And that's on the assumption that this is a simple installation, which it clearly isn't. It's a few thousand kilometers or mile long solar array on top of a wall going through the middle of nowhere. So in reality, it would do absolutely nothing to pay for the wall. And in all likelihood would simply increase its costs. Look, solar power in the right venue is actually pretty good. But the right venue isn't on a wall through the middle of nowhere or under the bloody road. Hell, I always thought a decent place to put them was under the power lines. You see, a lot of the pain in the arse with this sort of thing is land rights. Well, if the government already has the land rights under the power lines, well, isn't that the obvious place to build them? Because typically when they build these high voltage lines, they have a road in there for maintenance. So you'll recall earlier that I said that power lines are actually really expensive. So why would you have power lines going across the desert in the first place? Well, actually, there are actually solar farms out there already. And as you can see, it's not like there's exactly a shortage of space in the Southern American deserts to put these things in. But even at that, there are still things like hydroelectric and the such like, which means that you get power lines going across these sorts of areas. So you have a road there for the maintenance, and you have the power lines there already for the transport. So isn't that the obvious place to build your solar farms? I mean, Trump might be great at connecting with people who think in 3 or 4 word slogans. Lock her up, build the wall, drain the swamp, make America great again.
And we together are going to drain the swamp. Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall. Okay, you ready? Who's going to pay for the wall? Who?
100%. 100%.
Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
And I really can't take that away from him. He's very good at selling things with 3 or 4 words. But when it comes to implementation, Trump is the antithesis of competence in leadership. It's all style and no substance.
We're thinking about building the wall as a solar wall, so it creates energy and pays for itself.
Look, this is what you get when you make a virtue out of ignorance. This is what you get when your boogeyman is the liberal elite with their degrees in physics or chemistry. I mean, what did science ever do for us? This is what you get when you dismiss decades of research from the smartest people on the planet through personal incredulity at a rally to the adoration of the crowds. You get a man who is elected in the hottest year in modern recorded history.
But nobody knows for sure. You know, they used to call it global warming. They've had many different, they call it extreme weather. They always change the name to encapsulate everything. I think that there'll be little change here. It'll go up, it'll get a little cooler, it'll get a little warmer like it always has for millions of years. I don't believe that what they say, I think it's a big scam for a lot of people to make a lot of money.
Who then proceeds to appoint a climate change skeptic as the head of the EPA, and then goes on to pull out the Paris Climate Accords. A man who denies that CFCs ever depleted the ozone layer in the first place. And a man who wants to build a solar-powered wall through the middle of nowhere. I mean, part of me is just so tempted to try and troll Trump by telling him about this great new idea of solar roadways, where if America just replaced all of its roads with solar roads, it would become the power broker of the entire world.
And not to mention the freaking solar panels. It has been estimated that if all the roads in America were converted to solar roadways, the country would generate 3 times as much energy as it currently uses. Think about that. An abundance of clean energy.
And that's just what you would need if you wanted to make America great again.
It's eminently doable, especially with this president who challenged us all to think out of the box.
But part of me thinks that it's just a platform he could run on in 2020 and still win. You know, with chants of, build that roadway, build that roadway, build that roadway. And if you like scientifically competent media like this, well, at least scientifically competent enough to know when a solar-powered fence has no solar panels on it, you can support this channel directly through Patreon.